Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of 7Robots.
Fantastically Terrible Podcast.
Dios mío.
Mm-hmm.
Today's discussion is about the craft of writing and staying true to the world you create. We'll start with the craft part, sort of like the skeleton part.
The witchcraft.
The witchcraft. No, this is not the other part. The building of the world is the witchcraft.
Oh, that comes later. Okay.
That's later. This part is the part you have to work at.
All right.
Right? You have to be diligent, focused. You have to start and finish your script.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you need the writing.
That's right. You do.
And aren't you lucky you have me?
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
And we'll start with some books that we both like that you recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have glanced at because I'm terrible at reading instructional books.
You're the writer.
I know. We'll get to me later.
All right.
Okay.
What am I, some sort of clown?
Do I amuse you?
Do I amuse you? The Screenwriter's Workbook by Sid Field. This book was critical for me. Back when we started to do the comic book thing and we wanted to, there weren't really books on comic book writing. There are some
Back
now.
in the caveman days. Right? So then we went to just script writing books.
Yeah, screenwriting.
Screenwriting, because that's all it is.
It is, except you got panels. So then you kind of have to take what they have and modify it. The
I
great thing...
look at the stage direction
Yeah.
as panels. That's how I do the script.
Right.
I'm not sure how real comic book writers do it. I do it like a script. And my panels are my stage direction.
Much later, and I did pick up this book, and I did read it. It was the DC Comics how to write a script. But it
was it helpful or very basic?
It was helpful because I did have that issue with, I knew the Marvel style of comic writing, which was you just give a plot summary.
Yeah, if you
and
listen
just
to
run
Stanley and Ditko, it's more, here's what I want, you create it.
Yeah.
Give it to me and I'll add the bubbles.
Yes, it's totally...
Which we kind of do a lot.
Yes and no, because now at least I know for myself, these are the panels I want. Mm-hmm. Roughly what's going to be said.
That's true.
But before with Samurai Elf, it was like, hey, let me just draw a bunch of images and then we'll put a script to it. And
that was painful for me.
That's the Marvel way. And
the way we used to work was Miguel would literally draw everything out, give it to me, and I would then write it.
Right.
So I always liked your artwork, but sometimes I thought a scene was too long, too short.
Right.
But I'd have to try to link it all with dialogue.
Yeah.
And that was hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard for me to add dialogue to your art. I find your art very cinematic.
Well, I thank you.
You're quite welcome. And I enjoy adding dialogue
like
to your
TV
work.
cinematic or like movie
But
cinematic?
I like inserting myself with pacing. I'm big on timing and pacing and making sure that something doesn't go on for too long or it's...
Well, comic books as opposed to film, animation, and TV doesn't have a post-editing. So when you make a comic book, you're doing the editing ahead of time for the sequence. Whereas with film and everything else, you get to go, okay, I got a bunch of images. I can slice it all up.
A good filmmaker will not do that. They'll have storyboards. They'll know what they're doing. They'll know more or less what they're going to edit. But you're right. Ultimately, it's the editing
and
at the end.
There's like guys like Cronenberg, which, he kind of scares me that he just sort of takes shots of stuff and then he edits it together later and it's worked for him. I mean, some people do it that way.
Right.
But in terms of this book, The Screenwriter's Workbook, what I liked so much about it is that he went into plot. He discussed the importance of the first pages, how important they are, how things turn.
He lays out very clear directions on how to write a screenplay.
Yes.
Which is perfect if you need to know how to write a screenplay. And in the book, I believe he gives exercises for you to practice.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of those exercises is watching things that you like and breaking them down.
Yes, which we do anyway.
We do that all the time.
All the time, which is annoying. If you're going to be watching a movie with us, it'll be really annoying.
I keep my mouth closed.
No, you don't. You ask me.
So
what's going to happen?
I'm like a Brooklyn.
So you're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm watching this movie and it's new to me too.
Why is he doing that? Why? Yeah, that's me when I watch
Yeah.
it. It's like when we were in Brooklyn, I was in heaven. People would shout at the screen.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And they would say exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So
sometimes they would say things that I'd be like, what are you saying? Why are you saying that?
Yeah, why are you saying it out loud in a movie theater? But I would think it, so it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
So again, the Screenwriter's Workbook by Sid Field, which all of this I will have linked on our website, of course, like I always do.
Right.
And there's another Sid Field book called The Foundations of Screenwriting. Mm-hmm. And that one is also, he reiterates again what you said, why the first 10 pages of your script are crucially important.
He also said something that stuck with me forever.
Which is?
He said, you can have a, decent beginning. Mm-hmm. You can have a middle, but you never, ever, ever have a bad ending. Because people will never forgive you for a bad ending.
That's true. You can have a pretty good ending, but if that ending is bad, that's what they leave with.
That's right. That's the last impression.
Yeah.
So that always stuck with me.
In the Foundations of Screenwriting, he also talks about collaborating successfully with a co-writer, how to adapt a novel, a play, or an article, and how to market your script.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's great. You were talking about how to write with someone else. It's interesting because years ago I read my favorite director's autobiography, which was Akira Kurosawa. Mm-hmm. Big fan of you, Jimbo.
Every movie he's ever made.
Every movie he's ever made. And in it, he talks about the importance of writing a script with another person. That, you could write it on your own, but he says dialogue is important, and dialogue is a two-way interaction. Mm-hmm. So if you just write it yourself, really, you can do it. But if you write with someone else, you're literally having a conversation with them anyway. So you're working it out as you're discussing it.
What I like about working with you is the creation of the world, of the characters, of how they would react, of plotting everything out, making all the scenes. I'm actually okay with writing the dialogue.
Right.
I run it by you sometimes to make sure it sounds okay. You normally don't care. Yeah, it sounds good.
You're pretty good at it. You're good at it.
I don't get a lot of feedback from you.
But you're good at it.
Our partnership in writing is everything else. Everything to do with the plot, the world,
But you're pretty good at it. That's...
Why, thank you, kind sir.
Yeah, that's... what am I going to say?
You say nothing. It's fine. Let's end it there. Let's go to the next book.
Okay, next book. What's the next book?
The next one is Characters and Viewpoint by Orson Scott Card.
Really good book. When it comes to character development and viewpoint and all that, he's pretty good at it.
I'll read the description of the book. He draws characters from a variety of sources. So how to be influenced by different things to create your characters, to make characters show who they are, to develop characters readers will love or love to hate. And he also mentions how to choose the most effective viewpoint to reveal the characters.
Right.
And how to explore their thoughts and emotions.
When I create a character, I think of all their sort of quirks inside and out. I also think, too, that experience is one of those things. If you are very observant of human nature, that's going to come to you naturally. And oftentimes it's just organizing your thoughts.
Mm-hmm, that's true, too.
And oftentimes it's like,
when you're
I
starting
never noticed that.
It's how do I start?
Yeah.
How do I begin this process? Or if you're in a rut, how do I get out of this rut?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
I find that with my art, too. If I'm in a rut, hey, let's look at something. Maybe something will inspire me. Because that's part of inspiration, too.
Oh, you constantly need to inspire yourself. Inspiration leads to motivation. Wow, that sounded cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah, with perspiration. You got to work hard.
You got to sweat. Sweat. Okay, let's go. Next book is How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy.
Again, by Orson Scott Card.
Yeah, you like this card guy.
Yes, I do.
And in this book, it was more about story elements and, of course, science fiction.
And creating worlds and stuff. And there are a lot of worlds that I have sat and written notes and all sorts of stuff.
You're fantastic at building worlds.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and it's, like I said, I had all these ideas in my head. When you read these books, if you have those ideas in your head, it helps you sort of like structure and organize them.
Good point.
That's, because you're like, well, I got all these
an
ideas.
idea is an idea.
Right?
You need an idea, but you need to write it or draw it or something. It needs to come to life in the physical world.
Well, we just had an experience this week because we were preparing for Ghost Metal, some of the new stories.
Ghost Metal is our free comic on Webtoon.
That's right.
Which is an anthology. We publish different short stories, and our goal is to do 100 stories.
Or even more.
But
we're going to stay at 100.
Miguel wanted 1,000 at first.
Well, it sounded great.
It sounds good.
1,000 stories.
Let's go for something we can actually do. And that's 100, which is still a lot.
Yeah, and I was like, then there's that other side. See, that's the marketing side. Hey, 1,000 stories.
I know, it sounds fabulous, but I want something.
And then I was like, ooh, I don't know about drawing 1,000 stories. You usually have a conversation.
How do you feel about continuing this?
Yeah, 100 sounds good. Yeah. So, yeah, just this week, there was a whole bunch of stuff I had written, created this whole world in my sketchbook. I had a whole bunch of sketches and stuff. But then there's the plot. So it's like having all this entire stage with props and stuff, and then you have to make it all interact.
Yeah, we talk to a lot of people who will have a great idea, quote unquote.
Concept.
They forget an idea, a concept is wonderful, but it's nothing.
Right.
I don't know how to say it. It's everything
it is
and
something,
it's nothing. Yes, it's everything. It's the potential for everything or nothing. It's Schrödinger's cat.
Yes.
That's what an idea is.
Yes.
You can open the box and the cat is alive or dead, but you need to open that damn box.
Well, and here's the thing. Mm-hmm. So you got the idea, but now you have to organize your thoughts to develop the idea.
Right. So you're opening the box.
That's right. That's why when anybody says to me, "Hey, Miguel, you're a comic book artist, right?" Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got this graphic novel idea.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Exactly.
Because I know that there's so much work that goes into
all you have to say is, okay, write out the script and talk to me when you're done, and you never hear from them again.
After I give them the side eye. But anyway, what's the next book?
It's called Writing Dialogue by Tom Chiarella.
Chiarella, yeah. In my desperation many years ago.
I remember you recommending this to me.
It's a good book. I mean...
And the subtitle kind of says it all. How to Create Memorable Voices and Fictional Conversations. Get this. That crackle with wit, tension, and nuance.
True believer.
When it comes to any type of writing, there's a lot of hats to wear.
Right.
But when it's comic books, animation, you have to do everything.
And the thing is, too, to have a natural conversation like you would in a movie, comics is a little tricky for that. Because you got a certain amount of space.
Writing in comics.
But it's space. Because if all of a sudden you have like really witty, good conversations, it means more panels. It means a lot more panels.
Or rewriting the dialogue.
Yes, and
I've really written many, many things because they did not fit in your panels, and they ended up not bad. So it's you do need good pacing. And it's a balance. Sometimes you do need more panels. Sometimes you need less words.
Yeah, but it's it's really tricky. So I'm gonna revisit that book at some point to up my dialogue, so I can.
See, that's why I like
help a little bit on the heavy lifting on your side.
I like being more involved in the process before you start drawing, so your breakdowns go with the script.
Right.
And then it's fabulous.
Note to self.
Please, Miguel, include me, please.
I will.
Okay, don't forget, okay?
Okay, so what do we got?
The next one is Worlds of Wonder, How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy by David Gerald, who, according to the book cover, Hugo and Nebula award-winning author. And he actually is known for many things, including his contribution to the Star Trek franchise.
That's right.
It's a good resource for writers of science fiction.
Right.
And how to build these worlds, like we're saying.
You know, one of the things I loved about way back when I was really into, and I still am, into Masamune Shirow, the creator of Ghost in a Shell, because I think that he's just phenomenal at it.
His world is incredible.
There's a lot of things he got from David Gibson in terms of cyberpunk, but he took it to a whole other extreme level. which influenced me to want to create these worlds too. And there were certain things that I was looking at from him. But these books kind of helped me get a little closer to that in the sense of being able to organize my thoughts and then take these ideas and sort of, I guess you could say, modify it for comic books. Because to me, comic books is a twilight world.
Yeah.
It's neither film, it's neither a novel, it's this sort of medium that exists in between the two.
I think that's why Will Eisner was trying to call it a graphic novel.
Right.
Because it's a novel. Essentially, it's a story, but
right.
it has sequential art.
There's a whole big debate about, to call it graphic novel is too highbrow. Well, to comic sounds like, I don't know, I'm reading, Archie.
I'm okay with the word
Only
comic,
like funny?
But inside the U.S., they still associate it with superheroes. But outside the U.S., they don't.
And before superheroes, they used to associate it with, like, the funnies.
The funnies, that's true.
That's why comic, comedy, so on. But other places didn't have that. Spain had tebeo.
Yeah. So all these different words, banda cine, tebeos, quadrinhos,
fumetti.
comics, fumetti. It's...
Manga. Manga.
Manhwa.
Yeah.
Anything you want to call it. Comics is now just a word to describe sequential art.
Right. So I don't care whichever.
So that's why I'm cool with comics, but in a more international sense. So that's your list of books.
That's my list of books.
Yes. So I have to say, I was trying to think of something for this episode, and I didn't really have a lot. But one book that really influenced me is George MacDonald's, and this is going to sound funny, but The Complete Fairy Tales.
Yeah, George. It's not funny. I like George MacDonald.
George MacDonald's fantastic. And you think, oh, fairy tales, but even he's sort of like Will Eisner. He calls it a fairy tale because it's a fantasy story that people think is for children, but he only uses that word because he doesn't have another word to call it.
Right.
So he had mentioned, and I'll just quote him here, he said, "I do not write for children, but for the childlike, whether 5 or 50 or 75. Every single story in this book is very, it's so imaginative.
Yes.
And you completely get lost in this world. And I love them all, and I'm very influenced by pretty much all of them. But at the beginning, and you pointed this out to me when I read it, is he writes an essay at the beginning called The Fantastic Imagination.
Yes.
Let's see. So here is the essence of what I always take with me in my writing. Once you invent a world, there shall be harmony between the laws by which the new world has begun to exist. And in the process of his creation, the inventor must hold by those laws. These are essential because once the law is broken, the world ceases to be real. Inventions may be stupid or clever, but if you do not hold to the laws, or if you make one law jar with another, it contradicts itself and the art falls apart.
Right.
And so true. This is what people get wrong when they write scripts or build worlds. Everything can be fantastic, but in your story, if you establish your world, and then suddenly in that world, you contradict yourself, you lose that illusion, the suspended disbelief. And people start feeling like they're not in it anymore. If you ever write something and someone's reading it and they start to get bored or they don't pay attention, it could be your writing or it could be you're breaking your own rule.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
And suddenly they disconnect from what you're writing.
No, he pretty much says what all these others have said in all these books. But he said it way before them and very succinctly in a short essay, which is amazing. Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, like if you create a world, it doesn't matter if it's super realistic. Like it could be film noir. It could be Star Wars. It doesn't matter. Whatever worlds you create, don't break them or your world falls apart.
So you wouldn't have...
And that's true for characters as well. If your character... It doesn't mean that you can't have your character completely change their behavior. You just have to have a bridge.
So you wouldn't have, the main character from the Maltese Falcon singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow?
You would not. If you did, you'd have to have him drunk, or you would have to have a reason why he's behaving differently.
Right.
You wouldn't just suddenly cut to a scene where he's something he's not.
Unless it's a comedy. Like Mel Brooks basically made
Even
his
comedies,
chops.
you have...
He made his chops off of literally tongue-in-cheek breaking rules. In many ways, like, hey, like Spaceballs is just
I don't think
full
he
of
broke rules with characters, though.
No, he didn't.
He broke his worlds, like in Blazing Saddles.
Right.
That's a good example. Where he has this cowboy,
Right.
his whole world is cowboy, and at the end, and you do lose the world when you do this.
Holy Grail has that exact same problem.
And I think that I always have an issue with this. With Blazing Saddles, because it wasn't that long, it was funny.
Yeah.
It was just silly. The ending was actually over. So it's almost a second ending when they go behind the scene and you follow them.
Then they go to the theater.
They go to the theater. They
I think
watch
Holy
the own
Grail
ending.
was worse in that respect.
I think I love Holy Grail, but at the end it went on for too long.
Yeah.
You established this entire world and it always felt to me like you didn't know how to end it.
That goes back to Sid Field. That ending. The ending. You gotta have a good ending. Gotta have a good ending.
And it's not that it's not a funny ending, but it could have been better.
Right. But say take something like Spaceballs.
Mm-hmm.
Spaceballs literally is taking Star Wars, breaking a lot of their rules in comedy. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Isn't
It didn't
this silly?
break the rules.
No, it didn't. But it kind of took
That's
Star
more
Wars
of a
and
parody. That's not breaking
I guess
rules.
so.
Yeah.
I guess
I don't agree with that example.
Okay. All right.
Let's talk about, okay, well, you're talking about Star Wars.
Star Wars.
I will give you an example that I think you will agree with. One thing in Star Wars where I think they broke the rule.
Uh-oh.
And it led to disappointment, and you can disagree with me, that's fine. This is just from an analysis. New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Okay, we sort of get an idea of what the Force is, and it seems to be this very spiritual. You know, the more in touch with nature you are, the more your understanding of the Force grows, and it's something you can develop and refine, you know, almost like, Buddhism or something like that.
Right.
Or, or any religion, where you get in touch with it and you become more spiritual, you do a deep dive.
It's the Gyo in Chinese, yeah, or Tao, or, yeah.
Okay, so they established this in 3 movies.
3.
Right? And then comes The Phantom Menace.
Okay.
Which is episode 1.
1.
To me, they broke this rule.
How?
Suddenly, they introduced midichlorians. So
Oh, yeah.
instead of it being an inner road
Right.
to enlightenment, you just do a blood test. Tells you how many midichlorians you have.
Yeah.
Woohoo! We find out that Anakin is off the charts. His levels are the highest they've ever seen.
Right. Right.
To me, that's ridiculous.
It's just getting a little weirdly
It
eugenics.
would be fine.
It's just getting a little eugenics.
Yeah, you can read into it. To me, it's like the king. It's the
Right.
same thing. If it's genetics, then he might as well be a king and the right of kings.
Right.
It removed all of that they established in the first 3 movies of what the Force is.
Yeah, there's no way that you can become spiritual in order to...
They made it physical. And that means it's only a few elite people that will have more midichlorians than others.
Right, eugenics.
Like, when he measured his levels, I thought, oh, you just completely severed me now from the world you created in the first 3 movies.
It's like...
Well, it definitely
there's some of us who are
means
better.
some have more than others, and if you don't, tough luck, you're out.
But here's the other thing. Couldn't you just basically go get Anakin,
Inject yourself with
Take-
midichlorians? Sure.
suck out a bunch of midichlorians from him, inject yourself.
I think it's
and now-
midichlorians.
whatever it's called, and you're jacking yourself up. It's
Well,
like
see-
force steroids.
You're building rules under this new paradigm,
Yes,
right? Which is true.
So
But
you
it,
have,
to
like-
me, that was a disappointment in
and
that
that would have been
movie.
really cool for the Sith, where it's like they're like juicers.
It's like roids.
I'm getting a force
You know
boost.
what? That would make sense because there's the light in this world, right?
Right.
In this world where it's your midichlorian count.
Right.
The good would have it naturally. The bad would have synthetic versions, unnatural versions.
But are they bad then?
No, they're not. But, see, that's a whole world you can create.
Oh, totally.
It doesn't mean it's a bad way of thinking. It just, to me, it broke the rule in the first 3 movies.
It could be like in Fast and the Furious Nitro. It's like I'm fighting this Anakin guy.
Yeah, that's true. You need an extra squirt. Yeah.
Squirt, and you're like, "Whirr."
They could have done that.
That would have been to me like, but of course, then they're promoting steroids to kids. And it becomes problematic.
It didn't ring true.
That and Jar Jar Binks.
Oh gosh. See, that's a character too that was.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think that broke rules. It was just unnecessary and not a good character.
Yeah.
But this is just an example to me of
Okay.
of how you do that, and it's disappointing, and it feels, even if you don't know why, as you watch it, you feel like something is not right.
Right.
And because I read this essay by George MacDonald,
He ruined it for you.
No, he made it better. He helped me to diagnose what bothered me about that.
Oh, that's good.
Not have that.
Thanks,
That's right.
George.
Thanks, George.
You ruined it for me.
But George is English, I believe. So you must thank George for this lovely
I
book,
would
The
try my
Complete
English
Fairy
accent,
Tales.
but it's awful. Okay. I stick to my, I don't know what it is, Brooklyn, whatever.
Okay, you stick to your gangster. And I was reading a little bit about the new Matrix movie that was supposed to come out in 2021.
Is it called Matrix Patch Up?
I don't think it has an official title yet. They're just calling it Matrix 4.
Okay.
And I think now it might be released in 2022. And then I was remembering how many things I disliked
About the sequels.
The first movie is one of those exceptional examples of a well-written script, a world.
It was tight.
It was tight.
It was tight.
And there are movies that you watch, and that's why you watch them. They did everything well. The characters,
the other two
storyline,
don't
the
exist
plot,
to
the
me.
world. You know, upon further analysis, I see now all the good ideas that were in the sequels.
There were really a lot of good ideas.
But I think they were poorly executed. So the first Matrix movie established several things that the second and third film completely disregarded.
Right.
And I think that's why I disliked the second movie so much. Upon reflection, you can see some things that they were doing with it, but just in terms of reaction, I shouldn't have to research a movie in order to like it. I should like it spontaneously, yes or no.
Right.
And you can like it more or less if you watch it a second time or third.
Right.
But it was just, you sat there and you're like, what is wrong with this movie?
The bullet casings.
So in the first one, if we remember, there was the one, Neo.
Yeah.
And really the main goal, what's the main goal? For the one, the Messiah, he's going to save humanity.
Right.
What is he going to save humanity from? The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
There are slaves in the Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs to save them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Really old school. You couldn't get more basic than that.
Right.
Establish, boom. Of course, they built a wonderful world to go around that, so it didn't feel like it was repetitive. And there you go. So at the end too, the whole movie is establishing this is the point of Neo
to me. It was
save
perfect.
humanity.
It didn't need sequels.
Exactly. And at the end, suddenly he gets these powers. He does exactly what Morpheus said, which is he'll understand how to write the code of the Matrix,
Right.
and rewrite it.
Right.
He does that.
Right.
He even flies at the end.
Right.
He has complete mastery of the world.
It was, yep.
And it completely leaves the impression that he's going to do away with the Matrix, rewrite the code, release, and free humanity. What happens in the next movies? Bupkis. Nothing. Zero.
I know.
They completely did not do that. And, you know, if we look at it now, there are things where, you know, and people said to us, oh, when you watch this movie, make sure this scene, and the scene's like 5 minutes long. This is the main point of the whole movie. If the main point of the whole movie is only in 5 minutes, it's a bad movie.
No, I just want to watch the 5 minutes.
Why are you spending countless time on a horrible...
Oh, the rave.
The rave scene.
The rave, yeah.
Or such... I felt like
or
my
the
brain
raindrops.
was tired with the fighting scenes, the real world fighting scenes in Zion. Number one, the real world is boring as hell.
Which is supposed to be boring.
Right. The interesting part was the Matrix. Why did you keep making it an old school bad Rambo movie? Like, and all the good stuff. This
Bullet
is the
casings.
thing. All the good stuff was in tiny, short, teeny weeny scenes that you would sneeze and miss them.
And there were implications.
Yes,
that
were never
brought
developed.
up and then dropped.
Exactly.
And it was like...
So when you look at each character and you think, oh, that would have been really good, but they didn't do that. They didn't spend any time rewriting the rules. By the end of the third movie, instead of saving humanity, Neo negotiates a truce right?
Oh, it wasn't Neo.
He did. He negotiated that he would get Agent Smith, because Agent Smith, which was interesting, but they overdid it. He became like this, like a virus, I guess, or
error.
A worm that was working its way through the system.
Right.
So Neo is able to negotiate and say, I'll destroy Smith before he converts everything to copies of himself, and you leave Zion alone.
Right.
And but he negotiates. So at the end, it is so disappointing, only because if they had reestablished the worlds, we would have been okay with that. But they didn't. After the first movie, he was supposed to destroy the Matrix, literally rewrite the Matrix. In the second movie, he had less powers than he did in the first movie. He wasn't rewriting stuff. The agents sometimes punched him.
That's because they had upgraded.
Yeah, but that's a crappy little... They just wrote that in to compensate for the fact that they broke the rule. He could rewrite them. Well, it doesn't matter. He's like a programmer now.
Want me to tell you what really bothered me?
What?
The first one was very Buddhist.
Yes.
In its conception. And if you've read enough Joseph Campbell, you know that the Buddhist hero, or the hero in the East, goes, or even in shamanism, goes into this other world, gains all this knowledge, comes back, and teaches.
That's another part that they left.
Like,
he's supposed to teach the other people
what
the Matrix is, but they imply that in the first movie.
Right.
He was going to show them how to do this, and maybe, you're left with the impression people will learn how to manipulate the Matrix.
You could 1,000 Neos.
Exactly. They completely left that. They turned the one into the only one.
Which goes back to that elitism.
Yeah, that's true. Just like in Phantom Menace, they took it from
elitism.
something being open to something very, very closed, and it's just one person or a few people.
Right.
So they completely made him. They neutered him in the other movies and didn't explain why.
Right.
By the end of the third movie, you understand more, only because of tiny scenes, that the Oracle and the Architect are the two main characters.
Yeah.
You have no idea this is going on, though.
That's
and
why...
that they're the ones manipulating the other characters to bring them to a certain conclusion. And I looked at it a little bit like a chess game between the Oracle and the Architect, and the Oracle won. However, they did not establish that.
No.
And it's even the more Merovingian. The hell was that? Right?
Well, that's why I say this next one will be the patch.
I had to really do mental gymnastics, but it irritated me. It removes you from the world.
Yeah.
It completely removes... And all the actors, which had a rapport, right, isn't the basis of all this, and they kept really bludgeoning
I still remember.
This idea of love.
Right.
Love is the inconsistent thing, the thing that makes you act in a non-programmed way.
Right.
So, in the first movie... Trinity's love for Neo is what saved him. I guess it's what saved her in the last movie. However, in the second and third movie, everybody is like puppets.
I remember.
They're so dry in their performance. There's no all those friendships that were developed in the first movie, everybody's a robot suddenly.
I remember being in the theater watching, and this is a spoiler if you haven't watched The Matrix.
Honey, I spoiled this a long time ago.
Too bad. But when Trinity died, and we were in the theater, people cheered. It was like a mercy killing.
It was I love those Brooklyn actors.
Thank God.
And see, this is...
And that's terrible, because she was great.
That's such a perfect example of not establishing the rules and breaking
people
every single rule. You took a character like Trinity, who was strong and powerful, and they made her weak.
Yeah.
They made her so weak. They took a fantastic character who was right up there with Neo in coolness, and Morpheus. But she was so cool, and you literally wanted her to die by the end.
People were saying, thank God.
They just wanted it over.
It was, yeah.
And you can say,
bullet
okay,
casings.
it was Neo understanding how to write the programming. And he was able to do that if you put it in a computer programming, or even if you, because they're very influenced by anime. So if you want to put it in the context of it was an anime, sure. However, anime still has to follow its rules.
Oh, they follow rules meticulously.
So when he did that, you can give it lots of reasons why he was able to do that, but you did not lead up to that.
No, they didn't.
Like I was saying, at the end of the first movie, he could fly. He could rewrite stuff. He could see the code, and all of that was gone.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you have a movie where Superman can't fly and you never explain why?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
All right.
So to me, that's what is the main point when you're writing.
Right.
Whether it's the character or the world that you're establishing.
Got to make it work.
You have to make it work. If someone reads something and they don't like it, or they like most of it, but they don't like a part of it, pay attention. Do not take that personally. Well, pay attention to what they don't like. See what they liked, where they liked it, and where they lost interest.
Well, it's interesting, too, like in our writing sessions over many years, and we sit down and we're developing something, and I'll say, and then they do this, and you're like, why?
I know, I'm always asking why.
But you know what? It makes it better because it forces me to sort of go, hey, this helmet looks really freaking cool, man. And you're like, oh, man, yeah, why does it work that way? That's pretty dumb of it that it would work that way. Or maybe it works this way because of this. But it's very important.
That's what we do. You will have really neat, really cool designs and outfits, and I will write in what they do.
Or you will say to me, well, why is this here? Mm-hmm. And then I have to sit there. And
you're like, because it looked cool. And I'll say, okay, I'll write why it's there.
Or sometimes I'll walk around thinking, well, why is it? Does it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'll come back to you and tell you, well, maybe it does this. Right? Sometimes. Not all the times, but a chunk of time.
Right.
So it's very important to ask that. And it's very important to ask yourself why.
If you're doing this on your own, it's much harder.
You got to ask yourself why.
You have to ask yourself why. You have to really critique it. And if you do get someone else to write it, do not take it personally. If what you want to do is write something that people like, then you need to get feedback, whether it's good or bad. Because bad feedback will just be a rewrite.
Yeah, and it has to be understood. There's constructive criticism, and then there's just negative criticism.
Yeah.
Constructive criticism is, I take it as, well, this needs to be, this isn't explaining to me why.
It's hard to get constructive criticism.
Yeah.
That's why I said people will sometimes just tell you what they didn't like, and hopefully they won't be mean about it.
Right.
But if they tell you what they didn't like, just you yourself, take that with you, and you figure out why they didn't like it.
But there's so many people who are unaware. They might just say, I just don't like it. And they might not be able to tell you
why.
why.
That's why these books are important. You need to understand the craft and what's not working.
Right.
Did you break a rule? Did the dialogue fall flat? Mm-hmm. Did you have a joke that wasn't funny? So once you have your idea, mm-hmm. and you're comfortable with how to write a script, you find out what things you can do to develop your worlds and your characters. You have a laugh attack while recording the podcast. What set you up?
I was going to say, once you have your idea, go back to sleep.
That's the best advice ever. Just forget about your idea. Go back to... I'm going to do my Italian. Go back to sleep. Miguel, go back to sleep. Forget it. Go to work. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
You cracked yourself up.
Yeah, I did.
And that's our show for today.
That's all, folks. The Fantastically Terrible Character creature are the Nihilists from the Big Lebowski. We are given step-by-step instruction on how to defeat the dreaded Nihilist throw a bowling ball at them, bite off their ears, punch them in the face. We also learned that almost every movie needs a German nihilist plotting to cut off your Johnson. Just to keep it real.
It's all about the Benjamins and the Johnsons.
That's it for today. 7Robots Fantastically Terrible Podcast is by Miguel Guerra and Suzy Diaz. Our theme song is by Suzy. The best way to support our podcast is to leave a review on iTunes. This helps others to find us, and we can see your name and personally thank you live on the show.
And today we have 2 great reviews, which made our hearts go zing. A heartfelt thank you to
The Real John Lee and Nicole Steimel.
The amount of awesomeness in each of you shoots out like fireworks on the 4th of July. You're better than edible glitter. For more information on the episode, including links to everything we referenced, please visit our website at www.7robots.com/podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.